When you download the free iHeartRadio app, you have radio stations you love at your fingertips whenever you want, wherever you want, along with millions of podcasts from the news you crave to the true crime series you can't resist, playlists to fit any mood or activity. And here's the part you don't want to miss. It's all free. Download the free iHeartRadio app and discover music, radio, and podcasts you'll love.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and whatever, just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM. 915-544-5876. Or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. We're up in all those places in order to make it most accessible to y'all, whatever works out best. And also, of course, be able to talk about the many issues. Leave your comments over there during the progress of the program. That's mostly like Facebook and YouTube. Twitter, it's more of a DM or a message kind of thing here, but we do try to keep those up. And I've missed a step in the past, I'll freely admit. But otherwise, if you got a message that you want to get to us from there or on those points here, just let us know. Otherwise, whole lot to get into today. Of course, phone lines open a little bit later in the program, as we do, and already some bringing up points over there on the social media. Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, Flaco Jimenez, do appreciate it. Dropping those likes and reacts. And again, comments throughout the show. We can also pop them up on screen, which is why if you've never been able to or tried to tune into us that way, no, you do not have to have an account for anything, really. I mean, sure, it might help. Then to comment, you need to do that. But to see the comments and see what we pop up there, all you have to have is an internet connection. You can pop it up on YouTube or whatever way, again, whichever place works best for you. But let's get into some of those issues going on today, as we did ever so slightly mention in our announcement post. Shooting under investigation at a Border Patrol station in East El Paso. I guess we're not calling that Far East anymore, right near Joe Battle, but within Loop 375. So I guess that still counts as just East El Paso these days. And a lot of details still under investigation, including the FBI looking into it. So we'll, of course, talk a bit about that. And, of course, theirs has not been the only shooting involving immigration that has happened in our area recently. I mean, of course, this one involving the actual illegal authority to it, and among other things. But it was another shooting happening last week that there is more happening, including releases from prison for those accused of shooting at migrants in that case. So we'll get to that story as well. But also today, going to be talking with our guest, Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., about some of the other election-related things, not so much candidates, but the public money that is very much on the ballot. We've definitely talked a little bit about some of the numbers, but we got some very specific ones that's either, well, depending on where you live, within the city of El Paso, you could potentially be voting on your own, and then within the Cañutillo Independent School District, of which there is technically a little cross-application. You could be both at the same time. Could have not quite or right around have $1 billion on the ballot, and that's just a couple of examples. So we will be delving into those, plus some of those other big business stories, including downtown redevelopment, further sale of corporate headquarters, but not to move out, and a whole lot more. So another jam-packed show for you here today, as we are, of course, in election season, and we will keep talking about what's going on with elections and those kind of issues. So let's delve right into one of those. Again, stories developing right now, because our news partners over there at KFOX 14 are looking at what exactly is happening at that shooting that happened not too long ago, a little bit earlier today. Tuesday afternoon, so not too long before our show, I do assume. And some of the factors being looked at there are that it may have involved one of the detainees within that actual Border Patrol station. So what does that potentially mean? I mean, there's still a lot of details that are waiting to come out about. One person did suffer serious injuries and was hospitalized, again, according to our news partners over there at KFOX 14. That FBI and police are assisting with the investigation, as was being talked about. And so look for updates from them on air, and we'll bring it to you as we get anything. But other reporting concerns in the area, this one coming specifically from KVIA, saying that according to the FBI, that it was a detainee shot in the incident. So I am sure there will be a lot more scrutiny and a lot more details that we'll be looking to have come out of this, but still pretty much developing at this point in time. So unfortunately, just not a whole lot more details I can give you, as that what it comes down to. But one that has been continuing to have response as a part of it, including, well, this was not an official part of the response or an official facility, I guess might be the better way to put it. But what happened last week, we've mentioned it a couple of times on air, but hadn't really delved into it, to my recollection, to this point, about what happened in a shooting involving the people being not held in custody at that point. Well, just the title from our news partners over there at KFOX 14, jailed, had a history of alleged abuse where accused migrant shooter was warden. Now, this is, of course, the situation that we're talking about. Again, happened last week where 2 were arrested, and at least after 1 died and 1 was injured in a shooting happening out in Hudspeth County, specifically near Sierra Blanca, I do believe, 4 miles south of Sierra Blanca on FM 1111, which, no, I do not know where that is offhand. If anyone could point me to a better description of it, because I'm not familiar with that area. But those identified as being arrested and now released in that shooting as Mike Thomas Shepard and Mark Edward Shepard, both 60, as noted by both our news partners at KFOX 14 and others, including El Paso Matters. And this has been developing a lot of potential questions along with it, and involving also potentially some responses coming from, say, the governor's office and more. Specifically, well, the warden that we're talking about here, that we are talking about, of that facility, that migrant detention center in the area. The company that runs it has now said that one of these individuals, I believe it's Mike Shepard, is no longer employed with that. The Hudspeth sheriff has not responded for a comment on that here just yet. But again, the LaSalle Corrections is the facility we're talking about there. And again, El Paso Matters specifically reporting on this, saying that the warden at the West Texas Detention Center, WTDC, Sierra Blanca, Texas, has been terminated due to an off-duty incident unrelated to his employment. So, saying that this is not something that they were involved in or at all want to be involved in. And again, it's Mike Shepard in this specific incident who we are talking about. And again, 1 specifically died as part of this. Now, you're going to hear more updates coming from our news partners at KFOX 14 on this point as well, that supposedly, according to some of the affidavits involved in this case so far, that the perpetrators, or the suspects, I guess would be the better way to put it in this case, were saying that they thought they were shooting at animals, which I'm not sure is going to be a good thing for them to have said. I mean, when they say, right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you, finer point there. But also, if you think you're shooting at something, that's not a good line either. Remembering the whole 4 rules of gun safety, know your target. So thinking, well, yeah, I just shot at a noise, I don't think that's going to work out well for them. So interested to see if they have any updated legal defense or theories whenever this starts moving through the system. RJ saying that the twin Bubbas, one a jail warden, were hunting quail or something and switched prey. Yeah, kind of. Well, I'm not going to say what it seems like, but it doesn't seem good for them in any case, even if that was the excuse part of it, particularly since, 2, anyway, fraught situation and a lot of a lot of further issues and probably more focus going to be put on that region because, again, of these unrelated but similar enough incidents, and again, involving shootings, involving the border security and immigration response that is going on in our area. Expect a lot more attention being, part of it. And more comments, of course, about bonds and other things here, such as Eric von Holstein-Rathel on that situation, saying the article I read about the Shepherds had very little information. If they did wrong, they need to be punished severely. Again, a lot more details potentially coming out here. And Marky Mandingo on the, I think you're talking about the UMC, that the bond possibility that I want to say Louis Pinato brought up. Let's start with the first comment then, saying congratulations to the victory over fiscally irresponsibility for hospital certificates of debt. If you're thinking that's because it means it's not going to be approved as certificate of obligation, correct. It cannot move forward that way. But if you're celebrating in that way because you think that this can no longer happen, you might be jumping the gun there. In fact, I know you are, because it's not clear if this will be going on a ballot immediately. But again, to my understanding, that is essentially what the petitions were for, was to put this on the ballot. So it's not done yet, I think would be a finer point to be made. So whole lot more details go on there, and Marky Mandingo responding to that again. They will try to spin the narrative using sick kids as pawns. We must not forget that the Children's Hospital went bankrupt. Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. RJ clarifying that not giving the Hudspeth County incident, not giving them credit for their 140 IQs. We'll also have Ida Beza Gardner chiming in, and Eric McNabb again trying to make the point there. If you oppose this bond, you can't say you are pro-life. Yeah, we'll get into that and a whole lot more, but due for that first break of this hour right now. Coming out of this break, we're getting more into these issues, some of the other bonds, because even though some of the future of this bond is in question, there are definitely a couple of bonds that you and I, well, depending on where you live specifically, will be voting on, because, yeah, that's what's going to be happening in this season. And we got the details on. Going to be checking in with El Paso Inc. on some of those details, as well as a whole lot more of the big stories involving business development and et cetera in our region. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. More into the comments, and we'll keep that going, as well as a whole lot more discussion about the things affecting us in the borderland. So again, quick break, back with more. Don't go anywhere. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
El Paso freeways are crash-free right now. Just some slowing on the 10 eastbound from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot with 5-minute delays. Disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder gateway south at Sun Valley Drive. Northbound Dyer at Hercules Avenue, right 2 lanes are blocked for road debris. And George Dieter northbound south of Pelicano at Cedar Crest Drive, an injury accident there. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Recycle your old technology free during Staples Free Tech Take Back. Items like old modems, mice, and mobile phones, or cables, calculators, and camcorders. Staples Rewards members get $5 back in rewards. Exclusions apply. Limit 1 reward per month. Visit staples.com/recycling. Recycle at Staples.
There's a clear and present danger. It's deadly fentanyl, and it's killing our kids. How's it getting here? Through our southern border.
That's Tarrant County Sheriff Bill Wayburn warning us that the drug cartels are using the open border to flood Texas with fentanyl. The cartels even make fentanyl in the form of candy that's targeted to our kids. They call it rainbow fentanyl. This year alone, law enforcement has seized enough fentanyl to kill every Texan 10 times over. They call it a weapon of mass destruction. But Beto O'Rourke must not care about that because he supports open borders. Despite the deadly drugs, the gangs, the human suffering, Beto says there isn't a problem at our border. Not a problem. Our border is considered the most dangerous in the world, and it's getting worse. Beto O'Rourke, he's too radical and too dangerous for Texas, and it's why Beto O'Rourke should never be governor of Texas.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know how important it is to be confident in all of life's close-up moments.
And bad breath can rob you of your confidence.
Yeah, it can. Whenever I'm rubbing elbows with celebrities or friends or just chilling at home, I got to make sure I have the confidence that comes with Smart Mouth mouthwash.
Smart Mouth is clinically proven to eliminate and prevent bad breath for 24 hours with just 2 rinses a day.
Get to your favorite retailer right now for that kind of better together confidence.
Find Smart Mouth at your favorite retailer or at smartmouth.com/radio.
At EasyCater, food for work is our thing. Maybe that's why we get orders from 93% of Fortune 500 companies. So what's up with the other 7%?
So sorry the food is late.
You should order through EasyCater. Professionally delivered on time and as ordered.
Totally would, but the E is broken on my keyboard.
Just get IT to fix it.
Totally would. Can't type the word help.
Why don't all companies order through EasyCater? Who knows? Order 24/7 from over 95,000 restaurants on EasyCater.com. EasyCater, food for work. That's our thing.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back here to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Again, we are in election season, so anytime you hear that coming up, that means that we are going to be talking about the things involved with elections and a part of it. And, of course, candidates are going to be a major focus we're going to be having for the next month and probably beyond that, because I have a sneaking suspicion that some of these races we will be talking about, particularly on city council, will be going to runoffs. But even beyond that, there's even more that's on the ballot that you're going to be wanting to be paying attention to, because it's not just candidates, but also ballot items, including very specifically bonds. And so in order to kind of break some of that down, we are joined here in studio right now by Robbie Gray, editor for El Paso Inc. Thank you very much for joining us here in studio.
It's good to be here.
Absolutely, because delving into some of these issues, we're of course going to be talking a lot about the in-depth stories you are, but given that there are a lot of questions and a lot of focus has been on a certain bond, whether it be certificate of obligation or maybe now general obligation that will be coming up with the UMC, that is still kind of TBD at this point. But guaranteed, there are at least two bonds in our area that are on this ballot that people need to be aware of going forward.
There's a lot on the ballot, and a lot
true.
has been said about the candidates. I think there's some statewide races that are of interest here, as well as a whole lot of candidates were running for city council. But one item I haven't seen get as much attention is the city's proposed bond.
Right.
And that is on the ballot.
And indeed it is. I mean, I guess I wouldn't put much blame on them for missing that, because there are just so many candidates. I think we were talking during the break that there are at least 17 city council candidates on there if you add them all up between the 4 different districts that are up for election this time around. So that's gotten a lot of the focus. But if you scroll down, if you go to, again, epcountyvotes.com is where people can see all of this. And I mean, the whole first page is just the candidates, but scroll down right past that, you get into the proposition A, B, and C for the city of El Paso ballot. So those living within the city limits will get their chance to sign off on these that have some eye-catching numbers associated with them.
Yeah, so it totals $272 million. That's the bond that the city is proposing.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all of that is for street improvements. That's $246 million for street improvements, $21 million for park facilities, a big chunk of that for an all abilities playground,
Mm-hmm.
as well as $5 million for various climate change, climate action plans and renewable energy. But most all the bond is devoted to fixing up some of El Paso's bad, bumpy streets.
Which, of course, has been more than a little bit of focus. I mean, we have a lot of people bringing that up and having concerns about it, but on roadways in general. But the way this is being put forth as a bond, well, we haven't had as much discussion about that because, again, I think you're more or less right in your characterization that it's kind of flown under the radar. There are at least not anywhere near as much focus on it. So the way it's been broken up, and this, some may recall that this had some relation to what had been considered under some certificates of obligation that ended up getting vetoed. Similar projects, I mean, not exactly these numbers. That was more in the $100 million range that had been suggested, and that was one of the kerfuffles we had earlier this year on city council involving, well, the mayor's veto, among other things. So on the ballot, definitely now, not certificates of obligation. And so, again, the point of it going towards, street improvements, including sidewalks, streetscapes, and traffic controls and planning, and, of course, tax that would go along with this. Now, again, important note that people may not always understand is that this tax is then going to be separate from the regular city tax rate that comes along with the setting of the budget here. So whenever I say that, that I consider essentially the city a billion-dollar corporation, it's because when you look at all of the monies they deal with, whether it be in the budget or not, it's getting pretty close there.
Right. So this would be a debt that the city would take on that would be funded through future taxpayer dollars. And looking at basically, I believe the city maintains like over 6,000 streets. It's a lot of them. And you're right. Over the years, the city has been looking for ways that it could, maintain them and bring them up to standard. I mean, we've all bounced around some of these streets. So they've used a national standard for classifying like the condition of streets. And you can even go online, actually, if you go to elpasotexas.gov/progress, that has all the details for the bond. And you can even go see a map there where El Paso's city roads are all rated from, good to really bad. And so they'd sort of start at the top of that list with the 50 most traveled arterials that are really bad. So I'm thinking about streets like, George Dieter and Sunbowl and Schuster and Sunland Park. And look at repaving those. So that's a big chunk of this proposed bond that'll be on the November ballot.
Yeah, they've essentially broken up in between the some of the different districts here. Of course, 1 through 8. You make sure you have a good internet connection if you're trying to navigate that map, as I'm trying to do right now, and it's a little finicky. Kathy Kodra actually asked an interesting question here about what happened to the infrastructure monies the city received. I assume you're referring to there some of the, say, federal funding or like the Pandemic Relief Act or those kind of things. And they've been getting used in other ways, and particularly when it comes to, there's been some infrastructure money for, say, advanced manufacturing. That one came up most recently with UTEP and that being celebrated. So, those have been getting used in their own ways, I guess would be the simple way to say it. But this is looking at a very specific subset of roads, which has not been as much. I want to say there's been other infrastructure funding for like bridges and certain things, particularly international ones, and say like telecommunications, internet, broadband, those kind of things, but not so much for the, the roads that we all take pretty much every day.
Yeah, that's correct. And of course, a smaller piece of this is for parks as well as the climate change issues as well.
Yeah, and again, separate from some of the other previous ones we've discussed there as well, just to make that clear, referring to Proposition B and C, respectively, as Robbie was saying there, that Proposition C will be about $5.2 million for renewable energy and resource use efficiency improvements and planning. So, yeah, related to environmental issues would be a decent way, I think, to put it there. But of course, that's not the only bond that is on this ballot, not even the only other bond. Kenyattio, CISD, is looking at a renewed version of its previously, because we had them on the show in the last, I guess that was, it feels hard to pin down without looking at the exact date of when that was. Within the last couple of years, they had their previous bond issuance that was voted down. And so this is kind of a revamped version of that with some much higher costs associated with it, actually, in this case.
Yeah, and in terms of that bond, we haven't done a lot of digging into that one yet. In terms of our reporting, our focus this week is we're digging into a bit more on this city bond, and we've been looking at some of the races, but we haven't dove into that one. There is a lot on this ballot, but that's right.
Yeah, that is absolutely. I agree with that entirely. And so, yeah, it was about a year ago, November 2021, when it was that the Kenyattio Independent School District looked at their $187.5 million bond project, again, according to our news partners over there at KFOX 14. And now this one that they're looking at in combination is $255.7 million. I'll just say that for efficiency's sakes. And then $8.3 million broken up into two different areas. And some of the things that they have to put there at the end of each one of those is that this is a property tax increase. So I'm sure we'll be talking further about those. But even just between these two bonds, we're talking about, again, roughly about $500 million of public money on the ballot, even outside of other ones. And there is actually one more on the ballot that I don't want to miss here. San Elizario Independent School District has a $24.5 million bond on the ballot as well. So as much as we are going to be focusing a lot on the candidates, there's a lot of money that people are going to be voting on. And of course, as being mentioned here, Kathy Kodry also saying homeowners will be taxed out of their homes. I mean, that is one of the conversations that is going on with this along with it, of course. And so those will be something we'll be keeping our eye on. Y'all are going to be doing a lot more delving into different aspects of the election as well, including some planned things involving voter registration here in the area, right?
Yeah, that's right. And everyone should mark their calendars. It's coming up quick. October 24th is the start of early voting. And of course, election day is in about a month on November 8th. So it's coming up, coming up fast.
Tuesday. We'll, of course, be bringing you live election night coverage on that day. And one further note, one sooner deadline, October 11th, I do believe, is the last date that you can register to vote. So make sure you get that done if you are planning to not have me yell at you through the rest of this election process for not being registered to vote, because I will come for you anyway. I mean, seriously, these concerns are real, even if there's other accusations of fear-mongering along with it. We'll delve into that further. But again, joining us here in studio, Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. We'll be talking more about some of the other big stories affecting the region, because as much as elections are going to dominate the next month, seriously, this is a very much ongoing circumstance and stories. We got a lot more, including downtown redevelopment and what's going on with some major entities in town selling but not moving out of their headquarters. We'll delve into those and a whole lot more after this next break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Comments still going. Phone calls a little bit later as we do, so stay tuned for all that and more here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. The two men accused of shooting two migrants in Hudspeth County were released from the El Paso County Jail on Monday. According to the Department of Public Safety, the twin brothers were being held at Hudspeth County Jail, where one of them used to work. The men were identified as Michael Shepard and Mark Shepard, both 60 years old. Both are charged with manslaughter. According to investigators, Mark Shepard told troopers that his brother Michael thought they were shooting at animals. One migrant was killed, another was wounded. A shooting at a U.S. Border Patrol station in East El Paso is under investigation. That shooting took place at the Border Patrol station near Joe Battle and Rojas. Officials with the El Paso Fire Department confirmed that one person was hospitalized with serious injuries. The FBI is investigating. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
El Paso freeways are crash-free right now. Just some slowing on the 10 eastbound from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot with 5-minute delays. Disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder gateway south at Sun Valley Drive. Northbound Dyer at Hercules Avenue, right 2 lanes are blocked for road debris. And George Dieter northbound south of Pelicano at Cedar Crest Drive, an injury accident there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the CBS 4 Warn Weather Center, I'm forecaster Vane Castillo. We're in for another beautiful day here in the borderlands, seeing some really nice temperatures. We're looking at a high of 80 degrees in El Paso, 76 in Las Cruces. Also seeing quite a bit of rain headed our way. We are looking at a 30% chance for rain in El Paso, 50% in Las Cruces. And we are going to continue to see these rain chances sticking around over the next couple of days. Las Cruces definitely seeing a lot more of that rain headed your way.
This report is sponsored by Dell Technologies.
Dell Technologies provides growing businesses with tools to do incredible things because we believe there's an innovator in all of us. For advice on smart PCs powered by Intel V Pro that's built for business, call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL.
Hello?
Mike, this is Norma Jean at Sergio Lewis Body Shop near the airport. Have you seen Sergio?
I'm expecting him in a few minutes to cut a new commercial.
I'm really worried about him, Mike. He really believes he's a poet. It's gone to his head.
There's plenty of room up there. Anyways, his poetry isn't that bad.
Will you please have him call the shop?
Sure, Norma.
That's Norma Jean, Mike. Gotta go.
Yee, she's feisty. Hey, Sergio, there you are.
Hey, Mike, I have this great new poem. Check this out, man. Sometimes even our darkest moments are enlightening. Hey, what's so funny, man?
Nothing, Sergio, really. By the way, Norma Jean called.
Really? What did she want?
Oh, she was just telling me what a big fan she is of your poetry, Sergio. Sergio Lewis Body Shop at 3800 Admiral near the airport, where it's the customer's choice, not the insurance company's, and there's a lifetime warranty on all collision repair. 593-0191.
Staples Print and Marketing Services help small businesses create bold signs to make big impressions. Right now, get $10 off custom printed signs, banners, and posters when you spend $50 or more. Offer ends 12/31. Visit staples.com/this is your sign for details. This is your sign to print big at Staples. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour. And always online at KTSMradio.com.
Why should you volunteer with Meals on Wheels?
I never thought that 5 minutes could make so much difference in the lives of two people, but it has.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways you can get at us. The only thing you really need to know of that list is, no, we're not going to quiz you on it, is whatever works for you. So if you're on one of those platforms or think you might want to use one of them, just keep that in mind. Find us there. You can participate in the show. A lot of comments coming in here already, including Louis Pinato, RJ, Eric McNabb, Kathy Codry, Eric von Holstein-Rathlau, and a few others earlier. Mark Mendango, Ida Beza Gardner, RJ, if I didn't already say that. So dropping those likes and reactions, we also do appreciate Alex Campos, Ida Beza Gardner, Mark Mendango, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, Flaco Jimenez, and Louis Pinato. Keep those going. We'll pop them up on screen as they are relevant for what we're talking about, including Louis Pinato saying it's easy for non-property owners to vote to burden the property tax-paying citizens. If you own property, then you might think differently. That's also in its own way a kind of dangerous misnomer, because thinking that people who don't own property don't pay property taxes, oh, you do, just not directly. Because if you're renting, do you think that your landlord is saying, well, we got to keep their prices the same, we'll just have to eat this property tax increase? No, it's not how that works. So it's an important part of the conversation in its own right here. And RJ responding, among other things, saying $5 million for solar and wind. Tell me how you get to a feasible renewable energy source. And, again, more debate will be happening on that. But again, joining us here in studio, we are, of course, joined by Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., checking in with us as we do most first Tuesdays of the month. Thanks for sticking around with us.
Good to be here.
So we, of course, we're talking about some of the elections and some of the things that were being brought up there, but there's a whole lot more going on, including, okay, I'm not calling it a trend, but it is seemingly, 2 points do make a line, technically, of the one you're talking about right now, of a major business entity in town selling a major part of their operations when it comes to headquarters, offices specifically. El Paso Electric is not getting rid of their processing plants or, generation stations by any means, but they are looking to sell their downtown building, which I visited, pretty nice one, got decent views, but it's also looking to stay there. So it's not like we want a new building, it's that we just don't want to no longer be in charge of the building. How does that work, and what are some of the things that y'all been reporting on?
Yeah, so we received a tip last week that El Paso Electric was planning to sell its downtown high-rise. So we reached out to them, and the chief executive confirmed it. They emphasize this is in the early stages.
Okay.
But they are in the early stages of selling the 18-story Stanton Tower. And as you said, they would keep their headquarters there, but they would lease back the space.
Okay, so they would be leasing it back. And we were talking about during the break, it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but this does, make me think about the other recent time we've talked about a major business entity in town looking to sell their headquarters building, but retain it at least in part.
Yeah, in that case, that was Helen of Troy,
right?
Which is the only publicly traded company headquartered here in El Paso.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking at, or they are looking at selling their headquarters building there on the west side and then leasing back their space. In that case, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they aren't using a lot of the space that they have here.
Okay.
And it might make sense for them with the way that the industrial real estate market is right now to sell that and lease their smaller space back. In the case of El Paso Electric, to step back a second here and look a little bit at the background, I think you'll remember that the company was purchased and taken private by an
Right.
equity fund based in New York in 2020. So it's essentially, it's a private company at this point. It's not a publicly traded company. As part of that deal, the private equity fund agreed to keep the company's headquarters in El Paso for as long as it owns the utility. So, of course, the first thing that might come to somebody's mind is, oh, they're selling their tower. Maybe they're going to move their headquarters, but they can't do that under the terms of the deal.
Okay.
So they will. So what the CEO told us is that about 400 employees would stay downtown in the upper floors, and the rest of the tower could be leased.
Interesting. So again, it'll still be staying there. They might be looking at some modifications, maybe probably cheaper facilities exist then. I mean, because the more you build up, the more price increases. So I can see them maybe wanting to, but it's not being a part of that. I didn't realize there was a deal involved with it that was a requirement for them to stay there. So that's interesting. But
at least that their headquarters have to stay in El Paso. It doesn't have to be in that tower, but they have to be in El Paso.
Fair enough.
This would make it easier in the future for them to move. But that has not been indicated to us. But their headquarters does have to stay in El Paso, and so why would they look at doing that? I mean, we did ask them that question, and what the CEO told us is, I can just quote Kelly Tomlin here. She said, "Professional commercial real estate developers have indicated that they have the ability to optimize this great location and excellent building space to attract more businesses downtown." So basically, they're a utility. They're in the electric business. They don't necessarily want to be landlords, and maybe they see an opportunity to have a entity that's great at property management, owns properties in El Paso, and could make something better out of that building and give them maybe a hefty price for it.
Assuming that it would have to be worthwhile to them to even consider it. But it's also interesting then that other part you're mentioning there about there being essentially downtown redevelopment pressure involved with this deal. It's not just someone thinks that maybe at some point they could make money off of it. I mean, most people make decisions in business because they see a value in it more or less immediately, or at least starting the process immediately in order to gain the advantage on it. So that's an interesting point there about how essentially the push to see more activity, development, businesses downtown is a part of this deal, which is also a focus of another big story you all have this week about how downtown redevelopment is marching down Texas is the title there, but Texas Avenue is what we're talking about specifically.
Yeah, Texas Avenue. And it's been a long time coming, but we're starting to see that progress on Texas Street and in small ways. So, of course, Lowbrow Palace is operating there. You've had a couple buildings that have been renovated. One is being gutted right now and rebuilt. And popular Salt and Honey Bakery and Cafe is looking to move out of the Five Points neighborhood where it's outgrown its space and move on to Texas Street. You have some gyms down there. You have offices. El Paso Inc. is located there. We renovated our warehouse.
I was going to say that. Yeah,
so
y'all have part of it.
You could say we're part of that revitalization there as well. So it's been slow and kind of steady progress, but you're starting to see a lot of things pop up now on Texas Street.
Interesting. Yeah. And I've been to a couple of places, including some of the ones that you've mentioned in the story here, including the Craft Rhythm and Brews. I've had a couple of events there that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of. And so, I mean, it's always made a lot of sense that as much as there's been a lot of focus on downtown redevelopment and even some kind of like pressure south, essentially, has been one of the major focuses either officially or in terms of private equity.
Well, here's the real big serious question. What are we going to call this part of downtown? As downtown, it's like we've got uptown, we've got downtown. Do we have east downtown? I don't know. We need to come up with some names.
Yeah, so we're talking about, for those wondering here, Texas Avenue, essentially south of the big rail yard, right there, that kind of stretch.
Just barely south, and east, mostly east, I believe.
Because of course,
downtown.
the rail tracks aren't exactly like immediately northwest. It mirrors I-10, so you got I-10, then you got the kind of rail tracks, the former big switching yard, with a lot of that capacity having been moved out to the Santa Teresa area. But of course, the land is still more or less occupied because railroads will always do what railroads want to do, and so. Yeah, I don't expect anything happening with that land. But so just on the other side of it, where people may see like the Epic Center and places like that, we're talking about that kind of reach and that kind of span. So it's interesting. So yeah, downtown east isn't quite catchy, I will say, but it's an interesting question. And so looking at that development is interesting, and as well as these trends continue. One question did come in, Kathy Codry asking another one there. What about the El Paso Electric building on Montana? Are they staying there? Can't say I'm familiar with that one offhand.
So all of their sort of, sites around the city would just continue like they are. Yeah, the one,
Okay.
if we're talking about the facility out by like the Newman plant out in far
Oh,
east,
right.
probably
Okay.
on Montana. Yeah, absolutely. Here we're just talking about this 18-story Stanton Tower. I believe it used to be called the Kaiser Building as well.
Okay.
And that is what they're looking to sell and then lease back their space in that building. So it wouldn't impact their other operations around the city.
Yeah, particularly as again we get closer to generation, substation, switching areas, all of that. Yeah, that's gonna stay on because if there's anything conversations I've had with the CEO and land management of El Paso Electric before, they're looking to increase power generation capabilities in a variety of ways. So they're not the business is not being sold off, I think would be a very fair thing to say.
Oh no, and that's also part of the deal. I mean, they committed at least I remember correctly, I believe it was 5 years to keep all their employees here, and then of course, like I said, to have their headquarters here for as long as this equity firm owns it. So no, I don't think the Montana anything is changing with the Montana facility.
Absolutely not. But a couple other big stories that y'all have this week is kind of this simmering story that we haven't really addressed on this program, but involving El Paso Animal Services that has been having some issues going on for really a while now.
Yeah, it's been a number of years, but it's really come to a head. I mean, they have been dealing with severe overcrowding, and that has created frankly poor conditions for the animals there. Local rescue organizations have been raising the alarm about it. There's concerns about the spread of disease, the time animals are spending in kennels, the lack of spay and neutering to control the region's animal population. So the recent news on that is the city did announce that they have hired a veterinarian. If you can believe it, they've gone for almost a year without any veterinarians at Animal Services.
Which sounds, when you put it that way, very concerning. So glad something has happened now. So what are some of the things that are expected to other movements coming along with this at this point from y'all's reporting?
Yeah, so Animal Services had obviously had to be creative dealing with this overcrowding. So the first step here was hiring the veterinarian. It's Dr. Anthony Chacon, and interesting background. He grew up in Anthony, New Mexico, but he's been in London, where he graduated from the University of London Royal Veterinary College. Coming back here, and city said they had a 3-year-long campaign to fill that position. I just understand it's just been very difficult with staff shortages across the country.
No kidding.
And they say they have 3 more positions to fill for veterinarians. But the concerns continue among the local rescue organizations that there is just poor conditions for the animals given the overcrowding and the lack of staffing. It isn't. I mean, it's important to point out it's not necessarily unique to El Paso. It's something experienced by many animal services around Texas and around the country. But it's just become a larger problem as the animal population has boomed for all sorts of reasons.
Oh yeah.
Just irresponsible animal owners, animals not being spayed and neutered, so they're multiplying in the community. All those sorts of things.
One other one that I want to mention here, because it's related to kind of a previous subject we were discussing. Of course, we have this city bond that is coming up for city roadways, but that is not, and this maybe have been part of Kathy's question about what other funding is there going to be for major roadway projects. So the city bonds, those monies will be focused on city streets, so essentially non-Texas highways, so not like your Texas 20, any of the major routes that have those numbers on them, but everything in between. But of course, not the major highways, the interstates either. Those all fall under TxDOT, and a major new part of their plan includes that's not quite 9 figures, not quite over 9 figures, but high 9 figures, definitely, in the amount of money we are discussing about the next 10-year plan for the region.
Right. So this has nothing to do with the city bond or the city roads, but for the state transportation plan that looks 10 years ahead, and it's updated every year. The most recent one came out recently, and it includes $797 million in state funding for a slew of projects in El Paso,
including one of the major ones, and the focuses are I-10. I mean, just the entire downtown corridor that has been quite a lot of focus. We've had multiple sets of guests on this program talking about both some of the factors, the details, events people could get involved in, add their 2 cents, or things like that downtown deck, which again is separate but would be impacted by. It's been a complicated subject, but again, a lot of focus on that downtown section, essentially from Executive to Copia, which would be, of that number you talked about $750 million.
Well, to unpack that and clarify a little bit, so that project to expand I-10 through downtown, basically, like you said, Executive to Copia, the total cost of that is estimated to be $750 million.
Right.
So in the plan at this point is it wouldn't cover about 445 million of that. So there's still more funding that needs to be obtained and needs to be programmed for the project. That's it's something out in the future. But I mean, it's a nearly, I suppose, $1 billion project, you can say.
Yeah.
And it has generated some controversy with the prospect of widening I-10 through some historic neighborhoods and through downtown, and then also the effort by some community leaders to work towards funding a deck park that would reconnect I-10 with the Sunset Heights neighborhood over the interstate, something like Clyde Warren Park in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible it could happen, but whether or not it actually does, well, again, that's its own kind of issue that we'll be delving further into here. But again, these are just a lot of the very serious projects and stuff that y'all are reporting on going on. And of course, people want to find out any of the details and the stories we have discussed, elpasoinc.com, and of course can get their subscription there and get their own delivery for it. So again, been talking here with Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., talking about all the big stories and impacting things that we can, cram into a few segments here anyway, as we do most first Tuesdays of the month. So Robbie, thank you very much for joining us today to get into it as much as we can anyway.
It's been a pleasure, Andrew.
Appreciate it greatly. So that'll take us through that next break of the hour here. Coming out of this break, we will open up those phone lines and start taking those calls, see what we can squeeze in before we hit that top of the hour. But that number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Back in a minute.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound's a little slow right now due to a crash. I-10 westbound at Loma Land exit, blocking the right lane. 5-minute delays in the East Valley from the Loop to Loma Land. Trans Mountain at North Desert Boulevard, an accident reported. I-10 eastbound at Wrestler, a stalled vehicle blocking the left shoulder, and a crash with injuries. George Dieter northbound just south of Pelicano. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples Print and Marketing Services help small businesses create bold signs to make big impressions. Right now, get $10 off custom printed signs, banners, and posters when you spend $50 or more. Offer ends 12/31. Visit staples.com/this is your sign for details. This is your sign to print big at Staples.
There is no other like her. Bonnie Raitt, coming to you live with her band for the Just Like That Tour 2022. October 5th, Abraham Chavez Theater with special guest Mark Cohn. Bonnie Raitt, live. On sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Produced by AEG Presents.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. Annual enrollment is from October 15th to December 7th. This is the time to select a Medicare Advantage plan and start enjoying great benefits. Part C plans can help you add vision, dental, hearing, prescriptions, gym membership, and some plans can even help reduce the cost of Part B. If you are new to Medicare or just need to renew, Medicare Prepare is here to help. Visit them at 10295 North Loop Drive or call Medicare Prepare at 915-626-5113. In-home appointments available.
Fall into a hiring spree with Indeed. Their end-to-end hiring solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Sponsor a job and instantly receive a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
The thought of my sons growing up without me inspired me to quit smoking.
I talked to my doctors, and then I threw away all my cigarettes, ashtrays, and lighters.
I started exercising instead of smoking.
Getting support from friends online kept me on track.
Staying away from alcohol when I was first quitting was key.
Instead of smoking after I ate, I'd get up and take a walk.
I missed having a cigarette in my hand, so I'd hold a pen or a straw, anything.
Until I knew I wouldn't give in to temptation, I spent more time with my friends who didn't smoke.
I went to places that were smoke-free.
I didn't stay quit the very first time I tried.
I kept on trying, and I learned something each time.
Do whatever it takes.
No matter how many times it takes.
I quit.
I quit.
I quit.
We did it, so can you.
You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and CDC.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly at this point during the program. We have that phone line open now, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. And tell you what, if you want to get on the line there, I might put you on hold for a minute because we're actually getting very close to the top of the hour here already. Going long in some of our segments, but trying to cram in the best information and discussion for you all. So if you're on the line, stay there. If you want to get on the line, that number again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. And, oh, geez, a lot of interesting debates going on here. One of the more useful comments recently anyway, Kathy Coterie saying, my friend is here looking to purchase a home. While cruising around, I've noticed so many city roads are in need of repair. I think that's a lot of the conversation. So we'll talk more about that and a whole lot more again. Coming out of this break, more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound's a little slow right now due to a crash. I-10 westbound at Loma Land exit, blocking the right lane. 5-minute delays in the East Valley from the Loop to Loma Land. Trans Mountain at North Desert Boulevard, an accident reported. I-10 eastbound at Wrestler, a stalled vehicle blocking the left shoulder. And a crash with injuries, George Dieter northbound, just south of Pelicano. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Have you thought about dental implants? Has someone told you that dental implants cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 per tooth? Please do not pay that much money. Instead, go to 1995implants.com, the El Paso dental office where beautiful, top-quality, long-lasting dental implants are as low as $1,995 per tooth, including the implant, abutment, and crown. Plus, we offer a free consultation with the dentist, free standard x-rays, and convenient financing plans to fit your budget. At 1995implants.com, dental implants are very affordable. So get rid of your cracked teeth, missing teeth, and loose, old, wobbly dentures, and get the amazing new smile that you've been wanting. 1995implants.com is conveniently located right here in El Paso. For more information, please see our website, 1995implants.com. That's 1995implants.com. Se habla español.
John Mellencamp returns to the road, and iHeartRadio is getting you there. We'll fly you and a guest to the tour date of your choice and set you up with VIP tickets to the show. Plus, slap a backstage pass on your jean jacket so you can meet John. And you'll walk away with a sheet of handwritten lyrics to one of his legendary tunes. Prize provided by AEG. Enter for your chance to win now at iHeartRadio.com/John Mellencamp.
Wildlife poaching doesn't just happen in faraway places. It's a crime committed against countless wild animals all around you. Poachers don't care about hunting seasons, endangered species, or even the safety of other humans. The Humane Society Wildlife Land Trust, which protects wild animals through habitat preservation and by confronting cruelty, needs your help. Learn your state's wildlife laws, so when you witness a crime against a wild animal, you can report it immediately. Help protect wildlife at wildlifelandtrust.org.
180/111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day.
I don't watch television, so I get all my news from you.
News Radio 690. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Former President Trump wants the U.S. Supreme Court to get involved in the case involving documents seized from his Florida home. An appeals court ruled the Department of Justice could resume its review of the documents taken from Mar-a-Lago. However, Trump wants that to be halted by the nation's highest court. President Biden is expected to survey damage from Hurricane Ian in Florida tomorrow. The White House says Biden will get a briefing from Governor Ron DeSantis and other officials managing recovery efforts. The governor has praised the federal government's response. Justices on the U.S. Supreme Court are taking up a potentially big voting rights case. Attorneys for the plaintiff spoke after the court heard the matter.
Alabamians deserve better maps. They deserve fair maps that are not racially discriminatory. The Voting Rights Act was meant to be a powerful weapon.
It comes from Alabama after a lower court agreed with black voters that its congressional map wasn't legal. Those judges found the influence of black voters was lessened, but the nation's highest court allowed the state to use the map for the upcoming midterm election. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon won't go on trial for another year in a case involving the border wall. Lisa Taylor has more.
A judge set the trial for November of 2023. Bannon's fighting state charges of money laundering and conspiracy. He's accused of deceiving people to donate in an effort to help the former president build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. Prosecutors say he defrauded donors who contributed more than $15 million to a private fundraising drive.
Elon Musk is planning to go through with a deal to buy Twitter. The Tesla CEO agreed to buy Twitter earlier this year for $44 billion, but changed course and tried to back out of the deal. Now Twitter says its intention is to close the deal at $54.20 per share. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Democrat Beto O'Rourke may be trailing in the polls in his race for the governor of Texas, but he's getting a number of high-profile endorsements from entertainers. The latest is pop star Harry Styles, and experts say this will have an impact.
Generation Z supports Beto over Abbott by an almost 3-to-1 margin, but they don't turn out to vote.
Mark Jones with Rice University says the election will come down to turnout. Styles is performing a series of concerts in Austin and slapped a Beto for Governor sticker on his guitar. Georgians will continue to see relief at the gas pump thanks to Governor Brian Kemp. Liz Kennedy has the details.
Governor Kemp on Monday signed one of 2 executive orders that will extend the temporary suspension of state taxes on gas and other motor fuels until after the November election. He tells GNN he did so to help Georgians fight through the high prices at the pump.
And we suspended the gas tax to help Georgians fight 40-year high inflation and bad domestic energy policy that's created by people in Washington, D.C. that we have no control over.
The governor's second executive order extends the supply chain state of emergency as Florida and South Carolina continue recovery efforts after the severe damage caused by Hurricane Ian.
Michigan's Grand Valley State University Military and Veterans Resource Manager Jill Hinton-Wolf is serving veterans despite her loss of sight. She was diagnosed in 2017 with retinitis pigmentosa, which is a rare genetic eye disease that has taken most of her peripheral vision, and she says her central vision will probably be gone in 10 to 15 years. Wolf says she decided she still had more to do, and she and her leader dog, Hannah, have been helping veterans earn their degrees from GFSU for the last 2 years. She says her students keep her motivated. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
The can't-miss music event of the year is coming to the CW.
The 2022 iHeartRadio Music Festival.
Featuring once-in-a-lifetime performances from the biggest superstars in all of music.
Ladies and gentlemen,
what's up, Vegas?
Make some noise!
I don't know if y'all ready for this one. All hosted by Ryan Seacrest from T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas.
Don't miss our 2022 iHeartRadio Music Festival.
This Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. on the CW.
This report is sponsored by News Nation. Chris Cuomo is back with a new show on a new network. Catch Cuomo weeknights on News Nation at 5 p.m. Mountain. To find News Nation on your television provider, go to newsnationnow.com/join us.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know how important it is to be confident in all of life's close-up moments.
And bad breath can rob you of your confidence.
Yeah, it can. Whenever I'm rubbing elbows with celebrities or friends or just chilling at home, I got to make sure I have the confidence that comes with Smart Mouth mouthwash.
Smart Mouth is clinically proven to eliminate and prevent bad breath for 24 hours with just 2 rinses a day.
Get to your favorite retailer right now for that kind of better together confidence.
Find Smart Mouth at your favorite retailer or at smartmouth.com/radio.
Stay tuned and stay informed with News Radio 690, KTSM, an iHeart radio station.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of housing discrimination.
It's so wrong. But who has the power to stop this?
You do. The law is on your side. If you've been discriminated against because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status, file a complaint with HUD. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
Visit HUD.gov/fair housing. A public service message from HUD and the National Fair Housing Alliance.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, mentioning all of those so that you can find whatever works best for you, really. Whatever is the best location, best place, whatever just is most convenient, that's the place you should be in order to be able to participate in the show. Because, of course, you can make your comments over there, as we've had a number going on through a lot of, anytime a comment goes on long, remember, we can't put that up on screen, and some debates about the nature of human nature and zealots and or fundamentalists. Yeah, it's just been going on. Almost feels like a Friday show going on separately in the comments here. But some of the other points we've been discussing, of course, including what's going on with El Paso Electric, local facilities, and those kind of things. Again, if y'all just want to call each other names, as long as you're not violating our very simple guidelines on not just constantly swearing at each other, I mean, have at it. But for the productive part of the discussion, as opposed to, I'm not going to say I'm trying to put a clamp down on name calling, because we wouldn't have a show. I feel like at a certain point, at the very least, the way modern discourse works is, sure, clever names may be something some people do. I don't tend to involve myself in it myself. But if you're going to do just that, we're probably going to be talking about other things. Anyway, getting back to those phone lines now. Again, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much, Andrew.
Sure thing. What's on your mind?
Wanted to make a comment about the debate between O'Rourke and Abbott on Friday.
Absolutely. And we do have some recordings of that. We were not available during our show yesterday, but we've got some recordings that we'll probably be breaking down throughout, since this was the only debate we're going to be having, probably breaking down in different subjects and different major points throughout probably the rest of the election season here. So we're definitely going to be delving further into it. But what point did you want to make?
Well, first of all, the moderators should be commended in their use of videos. I'm sure you were aware of that.
Yep. Again, I was okay, so I wasn't watching it as much as I was running our radio broadcast of it, but yeah, very clearly the audio they were playing, the clips that they had up. It was very interesting. It added another dimension to the debate. I'll agree with you on that point, because it wasn't just well, you've said this, you've said that. It's here are your literal words, statements, phrases, whatever, in video recorded format. It's a lot harder to argue with it. Well, I didn't really say it like that now, did I? When you have the recording.
Yes, sir. And I could tell you Beto was caught off guard when they presented that September 19th, 2019 clip when he said, hell yes, we're going to take away your AK-47s and AR-15s.
I will say that, okay, so again, I mean, we have the video up on our Facebook, and of course, people could see that. It's still linked there if you want to go back and watch the whole broadcast from, I believe, KXAN. In that case, we shared their video. But I'll admit, I could kind of tell just from the tone of voice about, essentially with my recollection, is the moderator asked him, do you still stand by that? What is your purpose, idea now, etc.? Just the way it was kind of a stolid answer. I'll give you that. I'll say that, in that it didn't sound as much free flowing as he was putting things previously. It was a very much obviously this was, he knew, he had to know this was going to come up, and a very kind of practice pat line as a kind of trying to disengage from the issue, because as much as statements said in passion and fury and righteousness can sound and feel powerful in the moment, oftentimes, if not done incredibly carefully, they can often come back to bite you in the rear.
Yes, well, I feel that he, from my point of view, he circumvented the answer. All it required was a simple yes or no.
Yep, and I could feel the tension coming through the radio, so to speak, when it came to that here, because, I mean, he didn't, and if anyone was around here, I think it was alone by myself in the building by that point, but so no one can corroborate this or not. If I said, you didn't answer the question, I'm pretty sure I shouted that at that point just by myself here.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, but one of your callers, I believe it was the first one from yesterday, he was critical of Abbott because he mentioned Biden and the border fiasco. Well, Texas has the largest border with Mexico. Let's face it, and this problem that we're having is due to Biden's flawed open border policy. There's just no two ways about it.
I think, at least, I mean, maybe in general, I'd say that part of the situation we're looking at here in our area is maybe more related to specific migration patterns we're looking at. But of course, I mean, a strong argument could be made that the setting of the table has been done by the federal policies, which of course the Supreme Court did reinforce at the end of its last term. Call it for a victory for the Biden administration if you want to, but otherwise saying that, well, as in external affairs go, the administration, when in lack of laws, definitely has a lot that they can do to change that, which is, again, I still think it's going too far to call it an open borders policy, because that then kind of denigrates the efforts being done by like Border Patrol, ICE, CBP, etc. But I will say that making it a strong don't come here kind of policy and making it very apparent to any even casual observer that that's the case, yeah, more needs to be done there.
Well, okay, first of all, the migrant protection protocols were suspended right off the bat.
Right.
Okay. And nobody, no leader in El Paso wants to declare a state of emergency because they don't want, they do not want the, Project Lone Star in El Paso.
Yeah, and that has been made. Okay, I'm going to say, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I haven't heard anyone exactly say that phrase that way of we don't want Operation Lone Star, but given that there have been completely separate efforts and, to my understanding, no contact along those lines, that does seem to be the underlying idea being put into place by local elected officials anyway.
Yeah, well, like I said, you could fool some of the people some of the time, but you could read between the lines and see what their position is. But anyway, let me give you people some facts on Beto. Okay, Beto, as you know, is Soros funded. Beto graduated from Columbia University with a BA in English Lit. I'm sure he can write you all a nice poem, but he did want to remove the tax-exempt status from religious organizations who oppose same-sex marriages. And in 2018, he wanted Medicare for all, but later he backtracked and changed it to Medicare for America. Now, if you look at Abbott, who has been, he is a lawyer, graduate of Vanderbilt University Law School, and he served as a Attorney General of Texas. He's also served as a judge and now governor. So he's, Abbott has quite a background, both in law and in politics behind him.
Yeah, and I know that's been coming up as a point on some recent issues. At least one talking point I've seen, not just out of the O'Rourke campaign, but said by O'Rourke himself, is comparing and contrasting between the relative experiences and painting himself as the capitalist in the race, given his business experience. It hasn't come up as much. I think it came up in a public appearance recently, either maybe just before or since the debate. So talking about the experience for elected office is important, but it's interesting ways to see how this is getting portrayed in other ways. It's going to be continued talked about by the campaigns, I'm sure.
Well, Beto in his younger days, if you want to look at experience, according to Reuters, he did belong to a computer group, I think, called Cult of the Dead Cow.
Okay. I don't think I've heard of that one, to be honest.
That's according to Reuters.
Okay, so I mean, whether or not that's that's a very interesting group, I'll have to look further into that. I'll admit I'm not familiar.
It's a supposedly it's a computer group. I didn't go into deep about it, but I read an article. Reuters was referenced, and I went to Reuters and looked at that, but just didn't go too deep. But that's supposedly. Anyway, voters have a choice.
They absolutely do, and they need to enforce that choice and make it apparent, because if they're not making it, honestly, that's making a choice in your own right to not be involved, which is never one that's going to fly around here. Not that we ask anyone to prove your voter registration and how'd you vote the last 5 elections or anything like that, though I've thought about it. If you're going to come on here and say, no, I'm a proud non-voter, the next noise you're going to hear is probably a click, if not a swear word, if I don't catch myself in time.
Right on that. All right. Well, Andrew, I turn the mic over to you, and have a good evening.
You too. Thanks for the point in the call. Have a great one there as well. All right. Tell you what, let's get back on track here and not have me get in as trouble as do with the breaks and everything. So we're going to go ahead and take that next break. Now, coming out of this break, we will get to more of the calls, more of the comments, more of everything we do at this point during the show. So that phone number, if you want to get on the line, is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Lots of stop-and-go traffic on the I-10 westbound after a crash. I-10 westbound at Loma Land. That's blocking the right lane, and 14-minute delays from the loop to Loma Land right now. El Paso police responding to an injury accident I-10 westbound at Geronimo. Gateway West at Zaragoza, an accident reported with injuries. And a stalled vehicle I-10 eastbound at Wrestler. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by News Nation. Chris Cuomo is back with a new show on a new network. Catch Cuomo weeknights on News Nation at 5 p.m. Mountain. To find News Nation on your television provider, go to newsnationnow.com/join us.
There's a clear and present danger. It's deadly fentanyl, and it's killing our kids. How's it getting here? Through our southern border.
That's Tarrant County Sheriff Bill Wayburn warning us that the drug cartels are using the open border to flood Texas with fentanyl. The cartels even make fentanyl in the form of candy that's targeted to our kids. They call it rainbow fentanyl. This year alone, law enforcement has seized enough fentanyl to kill every Texan 10 times over. They call it a weapon of mass destruction. But Beto O'Rourke must not care about that because he supports open borders. Despite the deadly drugs, the gangs, the human suffering, Beto says there isn't a problem at our border. Not a problem. Our border is considered the most dangerous in the world, and it's getting worse. Beto O'Rourke, he's too radical and too dangerous for Texas, and it's why Beto O'Rourke should never be governor of Texas.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
This view was worth a hike.
Right? And it's a good way to stay on top of my health.
Yes, I'm Cologuard, a prescription colon cancer screening option for people 45 plus at average risk. Have you screened for colon cancer?
Not yet.
Don't wait. It's more treatable when caught in early stages.
Tell me more.
Cologuard is non-invasive and it's used at home. It detects altered DNA in your stool to find 92% of colon cancers.
92%?
Yep, even those in early stages.
This was seen in a clinical study with patients 50 and older. Any positive result should be followed by a diagnostic colonoscopy. False positive and negative results may occur. Cologuard is not a replacement for colonoscopy in high-risk patients. Do not use if you have had adenomas, have inflammatory bowel disease and certain hereditary syndromes, or a personal or family history of colon cancer.
Most insured patients pay $0. Ask your provider or an online prescriber if Cologuard is right for you, or visit Cologuard.com.
I'm in.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk on those platforms here. Phone lines open as well. Well, they're full up at the moment. You can still squeeze in, particularly in between calls. That number is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. So let's just go ahead and jump right back in there. Well, okay, let me say there were a couple of comments that I wanted to get to here from a little bit earlier, including a couple from Eric McNabb a little bit earlier that I think were decent things to get at here, particularly on the idea of taxation in homes, saying that people aren't going to be taxed out of their homes. This is fear-mongering, right-wing nonsense. Stop the ad hominem illogical fallacies. Okay, I mean, as much as I love a good discussion about logical fallacies because they're often underrated and understanding how to construct an argument, but to say that people aren't going to be priced out of their homes, that's literally already been happening in the area. And more or less saying that, well, everyone can just take a tax increase. I mean, think about those on fixed incomes, those that are low income, people being pushed out of it. I mean, we don't want El Paso to become Austin in like a whole lot of ways, but specifically within this, that only those that are making six figures plus can afford it. Now, I'm not saying we're anywhere near there, particularly since I think the median income is between $30,000 and $35,000 in El Paso. So we're pretty far from it being that only those who are able to afford major investments are going to be able to buy anything here, but it's not necessarily out of the realm of possibility. Now, not necessarily from this own increase, and yes, we've had even some of the conversations on our own air about the way some of the things were portrayed about it may have been a bit oversold. But to say that any tax increase won't do it, sure, I might even agree with that. But to say that tax increases overall won't do it, that's just not wrong. It may not be any one, but overall, in aggregate, particularly when we're talking about all of the different taxing entities, that just doesn't bear out. I mean, seriously, to say that we just that more costs don't matter, we can all just suck it up, that's not really reflective of, particularly considering that we have one, if not two, of the poorest zip codes in the United States here in El Paso. And that is not an exaggeration. So to say that tax increases don't really matter, I mean, sure, maybe there are other ways that need to be focused on for those communities, but saying that this won't deal with them at all, I mean, it's like saying, one duck bite won't bother you, but there's a whole phrase, nibbled to death by ducks for a reason. Anyway, let's go back to those phone lines now. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Maria Coleman, Kathy Coder saying that, yeah, it is about the money. And Maria Coleman saying is, so our local politicians prefer to spend millions of my tax dollars welcoming illegals and then busing them to other destinations. This is preferable to Operation Lone Star in El Paso. I didn't vote or sign up for this agenda here. And Eric McNabb saying that the ones we are voting on, straw man, I mean, again, it's the aggregate question, isn't it? Because sure, no individual tax increase, no particular cigarette will ever kill you. But in aggregate, altogether, it can start causing some problems now, can't it? Anywho, I think we might have some repeat comments coming on there. And RJ saying that, yes, welcome to Fantasy Island. Money tree is now ready for planting. Please send a few seeds my way. Absolutely. So let's get back to those phone lines now. We do have Raul in the Northeast on the line with us here now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Yeah, about Hispanic Heritage Month, I'd like to share a few lines from a column I had published in the El Paso Times. During the 9 years, I had a weekly guest column with them. But before I do that, I'd like to share a bit of my heritage. I had my DNA analyzed and found out that I'm more Spaniard than Indian, although I've always identified much more with the Indian part of my heritage than the Spaniards. I'm a second and a half generation American of Mexican descent. Both my parents were born in the United States, and my dad served in World War II, although he was living and working in Juarez, Mexico when he got his draft notice. Both my parents fled Mexico to the United States because of Pancho Villa and the Mexican Revolution. And on my father's side, our ancestors came from the Basque region of Spain and were probably Sephardic Jews, or what they call conversos. My mother's family were hacienderos in Chihuahua. Now, this is a few lines from that column. Mexican Americans should take pride in the heritage that spans centuries and continents. Mexicans share a legacy of being great adventurers. Our ancestors traveled great distances by foot and by ship to reach America. Mexicans are the fusion of Asians, Europeans, and Africans. Our black blood comes from the 700-year occupation of southern Spain by the Moors of northern Africa, which ended the same year that Columbus set sail for China. And the same time the Jews were kicked out of Spain. And I guess when my father's side of the family started coming over here. Anthropologists claim that Native Americans emigrated from Northeast Asia to the Americas about 30,000 years ago, when the ocean level was low enough that a land bridge was formed along the Bering Strait between Siberia and Alaska. Our Asian ancestors were seeking new hunting grounds. Over time, they eventually inhabited all of the Americas. Mexico's most prominent Indian ancestors were the Aztecs. According to legend, the Aztecs migrated from their ancestral homelands called Aztlan sometime in the 12th century. And they did so because they were told by their legendary man-god Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, that if they wanted to be a great people, they'd have to trek south until they came to an island in the middle of a lake where they'd see an eagle resting on a cactus plant with a snake in its beak. That's where the symbol on the Mexican flag comes from. By the 13th century, they had settled in Tenochtitlan, today's Mexico City. And according to Chicano legend, Aztlan encompassed the states of California, Arizona, Texas, Nuevo Mexico, and portions of Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. Now, a suggestion for a future show, either here or on your history show, about Mexican heritage is about El Paso District Judge Edward Marquez, that passed away some time ago. He challenged the Texas budgeting process with a little-used state law by launching a series of courts of inquiry back in 1994 to determine if there was a bias against the city in the state's funding of social services and highway projects. The state Senate Finance Committee eventually concluded that El Paso and other Texas border communities, where us brown people are, were shortchanged in the budget decisions. Oh, surprise, surprise, surprise. Now, Mike Izquierdo, his former executive director for the Council of Judges in El Paso and a longtime associate of Marquez, said that Marquez's impact on El Paso was tremendous because his efforts ensured that El Paso got its fair share of state funding. He said a single man took on a big issue and had a major impact to the point where they changed the rules. Courts can sue. By the way, courts can't sue state agencies anymore. After that, I mean, we used to wonder how come Lubbock had a medical school and a school of architecture and a law school in El Paso, which had a lot more people didn't. Well, Lubbock had a person that came from there become governor, Dolph Briscoe, and they had better highways over there, and we were getting shortchanged here, and we thought so. And it's because they over there in Texas consider El Paso a town full of ignorant Democrat Mexicans that keep on reelecting these Democrats that don't do anything for them. And so the state doesn't care either. You know, it's a bunch of Republicans up there at Austin, so they could care less about us. We should really be part of New Mexico. I really wish we were.
I mean, that's an interesting historical kind of armchair quarterback question about, I mean, it's kind of apocryphal at this point, the idea that particularly during the creation of the state of Texas, that there was supposedly a vote in this area of the current residents of if they wanted to say a part of Texas or become a part of New Mexico. And ultimately, of course, the outcome is apparent. We are part of Texas and continue to be. And while it's an interesting question, I mean, essentially the point was that sure, New Mexico was closer, but Texas was actually going to be a state and New Mexico wasn't. But I mean, as much as that would be an interesting one to revisit, the current realities are that we are part of the state of Texas, and making sure that there is attention paid to it, whether or not there's other, well, essentially intentions that can be ascribed to it, is very much a factor that, yeah, El Paso has been not that much paid attention to by the state legislature. One of the reasons, by the way, we go into what the state legislative delegation, both our state reps and state senator, are doing pretty much every year. So essentially, kind of talking about future coverage plans here on this program. Anyway, once we get through these elections, and probably into early next year, probably just ahead, really, the legislative session. We're going to be talking with all of our state elected officials that way. Again, the state delegation, state reps, and state senator about what they're going to be looking at and focusing on. Those plans already very fully underway, even if there's that whole aspect of the election to come through, though a lot of unchallenged seats there as well. So definitely something to be mentioned and further talked about here. Anyway, thanks for the point in the call for what it's worth. Got to take that next break now. Coming out of this break, talk further about other of the issues affecting us here in the borderland. And of course, I mean, the election focus is pretty well baked into everything we're going to be doing for the next month. So apropos in its own way. So let's go ahead and take that next break. Coming back, get on that phone line if you want to. That number again to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Selena Madrid with their CBS 4 News Update. A minimum of 25,000 signatures were needed to stop El Paso County commissioners from approving University Medical Center's $345 million expansion plan through certificates of obligation without going to voters. El Paso County Clerk Delia Briones says her office reviewed nearly 37,000 signatures and more than 32,000 were accepted. The petition was submitted by the Libre Initiative, which worked to stop UMC's expansion plan without going to El Paso County voters. Yesterday's announcement means county commissioners cannot approve the certificates of obligation for UMC, but a hospital spokesman says that does not mean this is the end of UMC's plan. It's now up to UMC to decide when and if it'll put this issue on the ballot for voters to decide. Now, if this does go to an election and voters reject it, UMC will have to wait 3 more years before asking commissioners to approve certificates of obligation once again. I'm Selena Madrid with your daily news update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 westbound is slow with stop-and-go traffic and 7-minute delays because of 2 crashes. I-10 westbound at Lomaland Drive, blocking the right lane. I-10 westbound at Geronimo Drive, blocking the left shoulder. Both crashes causing backups right now in the 10 westbound. Also on Gateway West at Zaragoza. A crash with injuries there, and El Paso fires on the scene. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the CBS 4 Warn Weather Center, I'm forecaster Vane Castillo. We're in for another beautiful day here in the borderland, seeing some really nice temperatures. We're looking at a high of 80 degrees in El Paso, 76 in Las Cruces. Also seeing quite a bit of rain headed our way. We are looking at a 30% chance for rain in El Paso, 50% in Las Cruces. And we are going to continue to see these rain chances sticking around over the next couple of days. Las Cruces definitely seeing a lot more of that rain headed your way.
This report is sponsored by News Nation. Chris Cuomo is back with a new show on a new network. Catch Cuomo weeknights on News Nation at 5 p.m. Mountain. To find News Nation on your television provider, go to newsnationnow.com/join us.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Your engine may be trying to tell you something.
Hello? Yeah, under the hood. Mind opening up?
I need a favor. I've been driving you around for years, and I haven't asked for much. Some gas, a little oil, new tires once in a while. But look, I'm feeling a little run down and sluggish. I just don't have that same get up and go. And I'm afraid I might fail my emissions test. I warned you. Didn't you see my check engine light? So here's where you come in. Head to your favorite auto parts store and pick up a bottle of CRC, guaranteed to pass emission system cleaner. Psst, it's in a box. Just open up the bottle and glug, glug, glug right down the old gas tank. CRC, guaranteed to pass, uses real detergent additives to clean my whole system. I promise I'll feel so much better. And so will you, because guaranteed to pass actually does what it says, or CRC will double your money back. Hey, have I ever steered you wrong? CRC, guaranteed to pass emission system cleaner. Available at your favorite auto parts store.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. The city of El Paso's Department of Public Health has confirmed 2 deaths due to the severe central nervous system West Nile virus in El Paso this year. The people who died were both men men in their 60s and 70s. Both had underlying medical conditions, and they were living in the 79936 and 79907 zip codes, respectively. Symptoms of West Nile include fever, headache, tiredness, body aches, nausea, vomiting, and swollen lymph glands. 8 out of 10 people infected with the West Nile virus will not develop any symptoms. And the reunion tour for Rage Against the Machine in North America has been canceled. According to the band's social media, the remaining shows in the 2023 North American leg were canceled, including El Paso and Las Cruces. The band states in its announcement that Zach de la Rocha's injury is what has canceled the tour. Rage has yet to comment on de la Rocha's injury beyond that statement from the stage, but it seemed to happen on stage yesterday as he was jumping up and down and something happened with his leg. I'm Iraka Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
Recycle your old technology free during Staples Free Tech Take Back. Items like old modems, mice, and mobile phones or cables, calculators, and camcorders. Staples Rewards members get $5 back in rewards. Exclusions apply. Limit 1 reward per month. Visit staples.com/recycling. Recycle at Staples. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, we mentioned all of those because, well, we got lots of factors and ways to communicate with us, including the comments that are fast and furious as always. Skeptic Squad out in force today, and the Thunderdome comments well in place, but also those phone lines. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Keep them coming as we will keep getting into those throughout the rest of the program. Sometimes they make me laugh in a weird sense of humor kind of way. Eric McNabb making a point that is technically correct, that El Paso is a very economically poor city that is predominantly brown. I mean, the demographics and, again, the economics we look at in this area are certainly a part of it, and yet there are definitely other poor parts of the state with similar-ish demographics that get some attention paid to them. I think it comes down more to the voting propensity or the fact that there aren't any voters. I think there's not many. Flocky Menace saying, you don't think it's because El Paso always has a very low voter turnout? And honestly, I mean, as many as there might be some factors in some minds in some of those ways, seriously, the fact that El Paso rarely turns out even for itself. I mean, during the 2018 election, the Senate race, it was thought that essentially El Paso might deliver it for O'Rourke. And while, yes, I know there are those of you out there who would dispute that being the factor, I mean, it wasn't even enough absolute voters that happened in the city of El Paso in order to make the difference, much less those actually voting for O'Rourke in that case. So I think that we make ourselves irrelevant in a variety of ways by not going to the polls, and that is something that I think needs to be very much focused on. Anywho, going back to the phone lines, again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Frank and Massey on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
Unbelievable. I am totally nonplussed, beyond flabbergasted. I can't get over why there is such a disconnect of so many Americans out there that are not outraged, and I say outraged in capitalized letters, about what this moron, this Orange Julius jerk, has done with our national classified information. I just don't get it. Why people are not so up in their arms about this guy being so willy-nilly with this kind of stuff. When I was in the business, this stuff, when I had my classified, the top secret stuff and all that stuff, this was sacrosanct. It was sacrosanct. You didn't mess around with this thing. And he just throwing this stuff out like cotton candy or something. I just don't get that. It's beyond. I can't even talk. It's beyond unbelievable. What do you think of that?
I think that the way that our national security documents and top secret and beyond information, or anything secret and above, is a very important thing to be considered, because if not handled correctly, I mean, we have had whole movies and series and people die beyond that, even when it has not been handled correctly. So to say that information that it's fine, that is not true. In this case you're talking about here, there is more than a little bit of a political implication. It's kind of inseparable from it. So whether or not it's totally 100% dead to rights correct, what is going on and what happened there and the way it's being investigated, it does have to be happening very carefully, because there are absolutely and undeniably those that would very much like there to be consequences, regardless of the reason. This is a good one as any from their perspective. So that's why, in a variety of ways, I've been wanting to see the full investigation. And while there's been a whole lot of kind of window dressing, hearings, et cetera, involving this case, I would definitely, well, I have no hope that we'll ever actually know the bottom of it, except for maybe charges. Probably my cloudy crystal ball is as foggier than ever. But I think that probably what this will come down to be is that if anything, a staffer or two will probably take it in the legal shorts, so to speak. I would still be kind of surprised if it goes with anyone higher up, so to speak. Though, again, it still deserves the full investigation because, yeah, these are very serious topics.
Well, you're right. You know, doo-doo flows downhill. And you're right. It's going to be the poor schluck that packed the box for Donnie Dotard. But no, I disagree with that. I think all the way up to the super top, they need to be sent to prison for a dang-ass long time. Now, the last thing I want to say is to you, Befuddled Ben, I got something new for you. New rant. What did Rex say? And if you don't know what that means, look it up, baby. What do you think of that?
I'll have to look it up myself there. So otherwise, thanks for the point in the call. You have a good one.
All right.
All right, I appreciate it. Let's get to another couple calls here before we hit that next break here, squeeze in what we can. We do have Jerry on the northwest side of town here with us right now. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for taking my call, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the debate.
Oh, absolutely.
I believe that Abbott won the debate because I think Beto O'Rourke Francis played ultimate dodgeball.
Okay.
So he dodged more than one or two questions, and then all he could do was come back with things that Abbott cannot control, because we do have a democracy republic, a democratic republic, and there is such a thing as a House and a Senate in the state of Texas, and they have also a say in how things run. From our leadership point of view, we elect people to send to the House and to the Senate of the state of Texas so that we can tell them what we want to do. That way, that governor is not become a dictator.
I think that would be considered a good thing for the most part here. Were there any particular issues that you wanted to make that point on about the control of it specifically? Any other specific ones during the debate?
Yeah.
A couple come to mind for me, but what were you having in mind?
The birth control one and the Second Amendment one.
Okay.
Now, both of them, he said he would overturn the state's laws as far as it goes to having abortions and when they're done. Well, that's already been decided by our House and our Senate. And people want to say, they cry democracy, democracy, democracy. But yet when it's their guy up there and he's talking about overturning it with the stroke of a pen, they yell hooray and F democracy. You know what I'm saying? So they're double-minded. They don't think about it, what they're doing. And I also want to answer a question of one of your callers yesterday that asked what kind of people, and they called them dumbos and stuff like that, would buy millions of dollars of property on a seashore.
Oh, sure.
That can be flooded because of a hurricane. I'll give him an answer. One of the kind of people is named Barack Hussein Obama. He bought a place on an island called Nantucket, and it's subject to hurricanes also, and nor'easters. So it's not just the people in Florida or along the East Coast that are subject to it. You know, people in Mexico are subject to it too. Also.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, coasts kind of period, unless you're, I mean, hell, even the Great Lakes have their own lake effect snowstorm. So the larger the body of the water, the more chance for disaster is. You got to bake into your calculation if you're going to be willing to live there.
Yeah, as they say, it comes with the territory.
Exactly.
So, anyway, I believe Abbott won that debate. Have a good day. Thank you.
No, sure thing.
Thanks
Thank you
for
for the point of the call. Appreciate it. I mean, I think we'll be, not to be too tautological about it, but I think we're going to be debating the debate for probably up until Election Day. We got some clips that we'll be playing for you, if only because we don't have any others that we're going to be able to pull from and are going to be one of the real showdown moments. I mean, there are going to be campaign speeches. There are going to be more ads. There's going to be a whole lot more put out. That is undeniable. But in terms of the actual showdown, the clash of conflicts and ideals, as much as we got anyway, this is going to be about it. So we got some breakdowns we're going to be continuing to do probably like once a week leading up to the election, probably on Mondays, that kind of thing. So stay tuned for that. A lot more comments coming in, including Raul Francisco Amaya, Maria Coleman, Kathy Codry, Fred Marquez, Eric McNabb, Eric von Holstein-Rathlau, Robbie Flores, Louis Pinato, Ed Clore, Ricardo Iveles, RJ, and more over on the social media, popping up some of those comments as they're relevant. But let's get at least one more phone call. If we weren't able to answer your call on the line, we might pop you up live. So be ready by the phone there. In that case, you're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Hi, Andrew. This is Mark in Central.
Hey there, Mark. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to make a couple of comments about the debate, but first I have to give the props to Raul for getting through one of his rants without mentioning Trump. So,
okay,
attaboy for that, Raul. Frankie, unfortunately, doesn't have that same benefit today. But a few things I noticed about the debate was Beto brought up several points, and he rarely answered any of the questions directly. He had his script that he was going to stick to, obviously, but he kept mentioning the border and the mess that it was, obviously knowing that that's a federal issue and under federal control. But I don't think it was his ignorance. I think that he just doesn't care. He had to say something negative about Abbott in that respect. So the border was one thing. The property taxes, which he mentioned several times and blaming Greg Abbott for, and Abbott corrected him more than once that was a local issue, that the state had absolutely nothing to do with that. So I'm sure Beto knows that as well, but doesn't care. The other thing was the busing issue that he brought up, about Abbott busing them to different cities across the nation, and that Abbott had his facts with that as well, saying that El Paso has actually bused more people out of here than the state of Texas has on their own. So I don't think Beto had any good facts. He just had his script that he was sticking to, and he had no substance at all. I wondered how long it would take him to mention the electric grid and the problems that Abbott had there, because that's what he's been spouting for the last couple of years. But
true.
I think it was about 8 seconds into the debate and his opening statements before he mentioned that. And hopefully that problem has been taken care of and so forth. That's about all I have to add for today.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Andrew.
All right, have a good one there. I mean, I wasn't clocking specific. I was clocking a lot of things during the debate, but I guess I didn't notice that one as being the first 8 seconds in. So I guess I'll take your word for it there. So Dan, do appreciate it. I mean, there's a lot more to get to with these debates here. Again, at least several different sets of points and clips we got coming up for it that we'll get to in further days and weeks, of course, as we continue to break down some of these aspects. But of course, we'll be bringing a lot of candidate coverage as part of our election coverage going forward. So let's get to at least one more call here, see what we can squeeze in. Again, I'll be ready by the phone and on it if you're calling in the middle of a segment. We do have a caller on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Oh, this is Eric. I'm calling in. I'll change my topic. Just the Beto, he doesn't have the power to take people's AR-15s, as people have already just pointed out. There's, it has to go through the state legislature.
Sure.
The state legislature is never going to do some gun grab. So that's just ridiculous. That's more fear mongering. For the people who are insecure without their guns, and that's just a repeated pattern among Greg Abbott and Republicans on all issues. They're all bad faith. Greg Abbott doesn't have any control over the immigration and border, yet we see we see what he's doing now in using state resources.
Mm-hmm.
And on the issue of property taxes, Greg Abbott, he's preventing the legalization of marijuana, which would reduce the need of property taxes tremendously. So Greg Abbott, he's against freedom, and he's against lowering property taxes in common sense ways like legalizing marijuana. Everything Greg Abbott and Republicans argue is always in bad faith, and there's always some actual reason why they're actually saying the crazy, irrational things that they're saying. It's not that they're dumb. It's just that they're just making up these bad arguments on the fly.
I mean, it's
because they can't say the actual reasons why they're opposed to something.
I mean, it's one thing to say that they're trying to cover for another argument, but it's another thing to be able to quote something the opponent has said on its own. I mean, I probably should have as a button here to be able to play, given how often it comes up at this point. But the hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s or AK-47s. Sure, there may not be the ability for him to organize a force to be able to do that, but I don't think it would be unreasonable for people to say, well, I don't want someone in there that espouses that kind of a point, whether he's actually able to enforce it or not. I mean,
go ahead.
The state legislature controls, has separation of powers.
Sure.
So the AR-15 argument, that's irrelevant. That's bad faith and fear-mongering, period. Regardless if he said it or not, as governor, it's going to be irrelevant.
Okay, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion on that, but I don't think saying it doesn't really matter. I don't think that's going to fly that much with those that are concerned about what that implication has. And even beyond that, other statements that, of course, O'Rourke has made about maybe trying to change in specific ways some of the laws that have changed in their own right over the past few legislative sessions, such as constitutional or permitless carry, such as the ability to handle of certain long arms and firearms. So I think that some people be worried about a trajectory of law coming out of it, whether or not they truly believe the legislature will take it up or not. I mean, there's almost kind of the first mover principle when it comes to politics, that those move first to tend to have more energy behind them. I mean, responsiveness can have its own thing, but still, it would be a trajectory, I think, would be the better way to look at it.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. I mean, I'm sure this debate won't be settled right now. And I'm relevant now. Appreciate that. We also have some other comments coming out there with hot topics. Can't always see all of the comments that come in through all the ways, but hey, do appreciate them. In any case, tell you what, we got to take that next break now. So coming out of this, squeezing what we can, tell you we got coming up for you on the program and a whole lot more. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Copia. A multi-vehicle crash there, blocking all lanes except for the far left lane. There's a fire truck blocked sideways on the freeway that's impeding traffic. I-10 westbound, 2 crashes, one at Loma Land, blocking the right lane, one at Geronimo. I-10 westbound, blocking the left lane. And you can expect 10-minute delays, stop and go from the Loop to the Patriot. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by News Nation. Chris Cuomo is back with a new show on a new network. Catch Cuomo weeknights on News Nation at 5 p.m. Mountain. To find News Nation on your television provider, go to newsnationnow.com/join us.
Hello?
Mike, this is Norma Jean at Sergio Lewis Body Shop near the airport. Have you seen Sergio?
I'm expecting him in a few minutes to cut a new commercial.
I'm really worried about him, Mike. He really believes he's a poet. It's gone to his head.
There's plenty of room up there. Anyways, his poetry isn't that bad.
Will you please have him call the shop?
Sure, Norma.
That's Norma Jean. Mike, gotta go.
Eee, she's feisty. Hey, Sergio, there you are.
Hey, Mike, I have this great new poem. Check this out, man. Sometimes even our darkest moments are enlightening. Hey, what's so funny, man?
Nothing, Sergio, really. By the way, Norma Jean called.
Really? What did she want?
Oh, she was just telling me what a big fan she is of your poetry, Sergio. Sergio Lewis Body Shop at 3800 Admiral near the airport, where it's the customer's choice, not the insurance company's, and there's a lifetime warranty on all collision repair. 593-0191.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-749-4779 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-749-4779. That's 800-749-4779. What do you have to lose? Call 800-749-4779. Again, 800-749-4779.
Because everyone deserves excellent medical care, El Paso has its own free community medical clinic. RotoCare is a free walk-in clinic located at 301 South Schutz Drive and is devoted to improving the health of all El Pasoans, including those without insurance or legal documentation. RotoCare is open most Saturdays from 9 a.m. to noon. For more information, call 790-0700. RotoCare, because everyone deserves excellent medical care.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may have been doing so, on air, online, live streaming, or on the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or on our social media. Bad out of time here for this show. One comment that we had come in during the break there from David was about that even if El Paso could be considered the redheaded stepchild of Texas, that his estimation, it still puts it better than New Mexico, comparing roads, public institutions, NMSU versus UTEP, and representatives, where Texas has on the order of more than a dozen or so. Mexico has just a few, so that's part of the point I think he was making. I do know that if El Paso had been a part of New Mexico, we'd be the largest city, largest single economy part of it, even counting the whole Albuquerque Metroplex. But again, that's kind of like armchair quarterbacking of history. In the meantime, we got a lot of factors we'll continue to deal with as we do every Monday through Friday. So more on our elections, of course, coming here. Going to be joined in studio tomorrow by Estefania Seifert, an investigative reporter with our news partners there at KFOX 14. But that'll do it for us here today. I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, chime in any way that worked for you. We'll, of course, do it again tomorrow more as we keep getting into all of the many different things that we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So until our next broadcast, in the meantime, make sure to stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the I-10 eastbound in the Spaghetti Bowl right after Copia, a multi-vehicle crash is blocking all but one far left lane. Expect delays. 10-minute delays I-10 eastbound from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot right now. I-10 westbound slow from the Loop to the Patriot with 7-minute delays, stop-and-go traffic, but the accidents at Lomaland and Geronimo on the 10 westbound have both cleared. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
You wash your hands and brush your teeth, but what about your nose? How do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage pulls saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out the other nostril, flushing out allergens, mucus, dirt, and germs, and it's why nose cleaning is the next evolution in daily personal hygiene. People try Navage for lots of reasons: sinusitis, allergies, snoring, things that make it hard to breathe through your nose. But over time, they also find that cleaning their nose makes them feel better, a lot better. Nearly 3 million Navage users have written more than 100,000 reviews, averaging 4.7 stars, saying things like, best product I've